Hey, Brian.
Hey, Chris. Good day to you.
Good day to you as well. Pleasure to be with you.
One, if I could,
Yeah.
uh, first of all, last night's group was extraordinarily good for me, and I'm surprised. And because the man box stuff is I think I took a workshop in 1982. You know what I mean? It's like seriously, it's like a long time. But like Mike's reaction to it was just stunning. And then one line that you gave, I think I caught this, was something you said about what your uncle said to you. I think it was your uncle about the metrosexual thing. Did I catch?
Yeah. And we're recording now, so just so you know, we're all going to be in the thing. But let's bring this in. Let's have this conversation.
Yeah, it's all in support of all of us studying the man box, and I just was, even at this stage of my life, I felt a sense of relief hearing you say what your uncle said to you, and the fact that, quite frankly, the way I perceive you, as this, young, strong, athletic, straight guy, etc. And the idea that this uncle contaminated some of your mind as an 11-year-old or 13-year-old with some nonsense from the man box was just fascinating to me. I just, it really felt good to hear that.
Hi, John. Welcome in.
Hey, John.
Hey, guys. Hey, Brian. Good to see y'all both.
So to anybody who's listening later, John, are you going to be joining us, or are you going to just be listening in?
A combination of both, if that's possible.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I didn't really miss out. Yeah.
I would love to have you here engaging in the conversation, just to have three voices in this.
Okay.
But if you're, it's totally up to you. Just because we are going to be leaving this in the main area for new members who might want to join, but who can't attend fundamentals.
I'll do my best. Appreciate the accommodation.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, let me just set the stage here. Welcome in for our community coaching call, training call that we have every single week. This is tonight's theme, or today's theme is the second module from our fundamentals training, which is survival, shame, the man box, and belonging. And so we're going to be talking about these four topics in relationship to the work that we do here, and what came up from our experience from being in the fundamentals training this week with the other men who are joining the community. And we record these so that if you join the community and you aren't able to attend the live training groups, which are right now happening in the evenings on Tuesdays from 5:30 to 7:30 Pacific Standard Time, we hope that these recordings are helpful for you as you come into the community, so you can move through the fundamentals training on your own while being a part and engaging in our community groups, which happen at different times throughout the week. So Brian, I'd love to, just since it's primarily the two of us, like this is, let's have a conversation here and go through it. I'll kick us off, and I'd love to break today's conversation up into my relationship, your relationship with this, right? And the teachings from the module, right, on survival, shame, the man box, and belonging. And so to just bring it in, I'll set a timer here for myself, just so we have like 10 minutes for each section, just to keep us on topic, and I'll try to catch it beforehand. But survival. So the key to just bring us into the conversation for a second. This is the second module of our 4-week fundamentals training. And one of the reasons why I see that this has become the second week of our training and not the first is because in the first week, we are all gathering in a space together for the very first time, right? And the theme that week is connection, the powered presence, and how to check in. It's a big deal to even be able to arrive in that space, right? All of our protective parts, if you're a man coming into this community from the internet or from a referral, maybe you've never even been in that group, right? And so we have to norm, and we have to have our first group to even learn how to be in the group together and to see if we even want to come back, right? And then the second week, we have to actually, what we've discovered is we really have to cut through we have to deal with all of our own individual respective relationships with the culture of manhood in order to create a shared connection, a sense of belonging around, wow, all of these men, all of these human beings who identify as male, we are all dealing with this culture of manhood. And so the first part to this is survival, shame, the man box, and belonging. And so with what we want men to discover here in this night is, and to realize, is that in order to survive, to get to where I am today, we all went through autonomic processes of survival, which are non-conscious. My body responded to the environment in order to survive, to get to where I am today. And that process is autonomic. It's non-conscious. It is a protective pattern, and it's in a constant, we were in a constant seesaw between survival and connection, survival and connection. And now that we're here in this space, able to take care of ourselves, able to make the choice to be here, we are able to become conscious of these protective parts that we have cultivated through our life to get to where we are today. And so really, for me, it's about making sure that men we're just planting the seed, right? Like, this is our fundamentals training. But John, you're here, you weren't in the training this week. And Brian, you've been practicing this community for over a year. And I'd love to talk about like how, even if you've been practicing this, what I've heard from all the men is that like this actually, they learned a lot, like re-engaging on these subjects. So Brian, like, what did you learn from just that main topic of survival?
That survival is not just about being in an emergency situation and reacting to it, but rather, if I got this, it's a lot of little subconscious, subdural kind of things that go on all the time that have us reacting to our environment. That it's really like small s survival. Like capital S survival would be like being in the jungle and fighting, right? Small s survival is what we do every day in terms of surviving in the environment and the different things that come our way.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. And when you said, I love how you said it's not this big capital S survival. It's just happening all of the time. Gaber Mate has a great thing that he always likes to say, which is we're in this constant choice between authenticity and attachment, right? And if attachment is, but attachment, when we're being nurtured, attachment always wins out over authenticity. Meaning, if I can't be authentic, if I even get the sense that the way that I'm being is not acceptable, then I will learn to not be that way in order to stay attached, right? And what I see happening in the group when we come in is we're getting to work through this together in a brave space as a group of men. And that's what the first big thing is to start to work with is, wow, like when you said that, I felt tight on and in my body, and the story in my head was this. And we're really cutting through that. as a group of men, whether you're new or whether you're witnessing a man who is new. John, did you have anything you want to share? Yeah, awesome.
I do. I missed the group, unfortunately. I was traveling, but for me, survival in this context is really, I wrote it down, it's about adaptability. And then, you've sort of said it for me, but, growing up like in the deep South, sort of not fitting in, really around a bunch of tough guys. I think survival, adaptivity results in the suppression or repression of oneself as a man, in order to keep that connection, that belonging, that sense of not being completely ostracized from the group. So relate to that 100%.
And when you said not being ostracized from the group, that's, I'd love to just bring in shame, right? Because shame is the emotion, which is from an adaptive perspective, tells us if I did what I did, or if I'm being the way that I'm being, I would not be allowed in the tribe, right? If I continue to express this. And shame, we start to be able to be shamed. We get to start to be able to experience shame around, I believe it's 12 to 24 months of age, when we start to relate to others in our environment in order to survive, in order to stay attached, right? Before that, we don't know how to be ashamed, right? And then we go into being 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, right? And we start hearing, no, you can't sit with us, you can't play with us, right? You have to be a certain way in order to hang out with me, right? In order to be a part of this group. And so from a very early age, shame starts to play a role in our relational process. And we have to talk about that as a group of men here in the space we're choosing to show up, because learning to work with shame is all about learning to flip shame into guilt, being able to acknowledge and take that risk of authenticity to say, this is what I have kept hidden, and bringing it into the space so that other men can relate to it. And shame is the primary emotion that helps construct or maintain the structure of the man box that exists in our culture. And so, do you guys have anything like in terms of your relationship with shame before we move into the man box?
I would just say that, like, coming into the Unshakable Man 2 years ago now, I think coming into any group of men, that man coming in is going to sort of assess and hold back and figure out where they fit, how they fit, all those things. But it almost seemed too good to be true that you could show up exactly as you are. But yet over the last 2 years of participating many times a week in groups and with a bunch of different guys, I see over and over that that's absolutely what you can do, because new guys come and they are accepted 100% as they are. I think that this program, and maybe others like it, are sort of the exception to the norm. I think that doesn't really exist in other all male groups in society.
Why do you think that is? Like if we had to appreciate, rather than looking at that as, oh, that's bad, right? Or that it stinks. Can we appreciate the fundamental reason, like what might be attributing to that outside of this community, outside of this space?
Attributing to or contributing to not
able to just be as we are.
I think it's the culture of toxic masculinity in America. You know, I just finished reading, I mean, I don't really want to say his name, but a book that I totally I disagreed 100% with,
Oh,
but I made
I would actually love to know what the book is.
The Way of Men,
The Way of Men. Okay.
Jack Donovan.
Okay.
Yeah, it felt very much that this person, like the philosophy is it's very toxic masculinity. So anyone that doesn't fit that role is sort of like to be ostracized. And that philosophy comes from like history, right? Like when we were banned, you know, I mean, all of that. So I guess to answer that question, I mean, and the other side of it, Chris, is
well, go ahead.
I think that men like us, for lack of a better term, I don't know how many there are. You know, I mean, my friends are loving and open and all those things, but they're not showing up in group, right? Like they're not drawn to this like we are.
Let me jump in, because this is something that happens, right, in the formation of these spaces. And I want to let you know that I notice my own reactions on and in my body, sensations on in my body, and the story in my head in terms of judgments and stories about men who write these books, right? And also I just want to bring in another person as a learning opportunity from today. This is from an email from Connor Beaton, who I really appreciate his teachings and the work that he does out in the world. But he wrote an article on another person in the manosphere. I love that word, the manosphere that's out there, named Andrew Tate. And I haven't watched any of Andrew Tate's videos. And I don't really know who Andrew Tate is beyond some images. But what I do know is that he's a huge proponent of the red pill area. Have you guys heard of what red pill is? It's man up culture 100%. It's like women have to be controlled. Women are like it's force. And this is happening. This exists out in the world, right? And human beings, men, respond to fear and insecurity of how do I fit into the world from a place of fear, tightens the body, projects onto the environment, right? But what I want to look at is why is this happening? Like underneath, like fundamentally, without saying, oh, that's bad directly, because when we say things like toxic masculinity, not only does it make it worse if othering other people and saying people aren't like us, but we're here creating this community and doing this training in order to teach men skills. And the thing that I notice in this is that men have not had the direct physical experiences that we have had that allow them to heal, that allow them to find a way towards openness and wholeness. And when you have not had that, this happens, point blank. And that isn't just a belief for me, that is a direct physical experience of witnessing men move through this opening experience, right? They are literally unconscious of these things, and they've cultivated stories in their head to help themselves feel safe and created these masks of false security around being these guys that are complete facades, right? That have to be consistently fueled up, right? And when I ask that question of like, why, what allows us to be this way in this space? And I'm going to just give this one answer, is structure. It's structure. We have a structure in our community. We have agreements, right? We step into this space. Men arrive here. And that is what we're learning in the fundamentals training. We are taking men out of the default experience of our life, which is is mostly around surviving, right? Piecing things together, trying to figure out our way. And we are bringing men through a step-by-step process to learn to create this brave space. And we have three primary agreements: confidentiality versus secrecy, the intention of the space, and cultivating a brave space, that this is not a safe space, that we all have to take responsibility to let the other people, men in the space, know what we're feeling when we're feeling it, and that that's a choice, and that there's no good or bad emotions, and that this structure allows us to be with what's happening in the space. And when that happens, when we have the direct physical experience of doing that with a group of other human beings, it changes us from the nervous system up, right? Because thoughts, stories, belief systems all align to the neural pathways of the body, right? And we're not going to go down this far thing, but I could go pull this quote out from polyvagal theory of how the nervous system, the way the brain is structured, thoughts, belief systems, ideas are absolutely rooted in the neural pathways of the body, right? And so that is what we're doing in the Unshakable Man community, right? Men are making a choice to be here. And then because we have this structure, if a man shows up in a way that projects into the group, we have the tools to be able to mirror that back at him, right? For him to be able to take responsibility for it. And if he can't take responsibility for it, then he's not in the agreements, right? He's not gonna be able to be here, right? It doesn't work. And I think just pointing out into the world, like, that's why I'm here. Like, that's why I'm devoting my life to this work, is because when opening, I didn't know that this existed, right? Like when I was 26 years old, I was just thrashing. I was trying to piece it all together on my own, right? Like trying to figure this out. I needed other men in my life. And now I have you, John, and you, Brian, who I check in with, right? And if I bring something in the space, like, you guys aren't telling me how to be, but your nervous systems show me based on your experience, right? When you say, oh, when you said that, Chris, I felt tight, right? And the story in my head is blah, blah, blah. It's like, you're helping guide me to my own wisdom and my own healing. But I know I'm going off into these tangents, but I'll probably have to go get that. But lost my train of thought. The man box is held together by shame, right? And the rigid masculinity, which is what I choose to say instead of toxic masculinity, is this rigid masculinity is based in this fear, right? Of how do I expand? How do I allow this to be the way that it is? We're not actually a grounded whole. We don't actually have an internal sense of confidence. It's structured in this external protective form of confidence. That was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys feel ready to go on to the man box? All
Yes.
right. So for anyone who's listening, our first exercise in working with the man box is to construct the man box, which is always this, it's every time I do it with a group of men, I get to feel surprised of how it comes together in a different way. Even when I think I already know what it's going to be. But the man box is, to just put a definition to it, it's the it's the cultural pressure to be a certain way based on the hegemonic culture of masculinity, which is you have to either be this way or you're not a man, right? You're not in the box. So John and Brian, like, what has your relationship been with just discovering the man box?
Brian, you want to go first?
Sure. As I had said to Chris at the beginning, and maybe before we were being recorded, that I literally studied and did a workshop in 1982 on the mailbox. And I've been, over the time in TUM, I've been getting in touch with my younger days and all the messages I got around my masculinity, and putting in that context of fear and loathing, in terms of, just struggling with the messages that society had given me in my youth and all through my youth and young adulthood about what it means to be a man. And so I began that process a long time ago of working on it, and it's been inconsistent and, mostly successful. But what I noticed in group last night, when Chris asked, I think it was the first assignment, for guys to put their 10 names to the different messages being given out there, about words and messages that are the man box words and triggers or whatever. And I thought about 30 or 40 of them, and I realized it's taken me years and years to go over it. But I tackled each one of those words a time and time and time again, and they never went away, but their power over me got reduced. And so that when I hear certain words, or there were 30, 40 words out there that the guys put out there that, there was like a wealth of negativity about, or injunctives on how to be a man. And it was that was a lot of stuff, but I guess I'm optimistic that if you work on it in a safe and brave space with men you trust, it makes it easier to tackle those things, to tackle those fears and other things that come with a sense of inadequacy and all that come from those messages that were given. And so, it resonated with me.
I love how you, Brian, like when you shared that, I just got this image in my head of these guys that John, that you said that we don't agree with. And I felt sad, right? Like I felt sadness and I felt empathy for those men, for all of the young men who are feeling hurt and are seeing these messages from other people that the way of being a man is bad because he has, and that there is this this response in our culture that young men are receiving, which is don't be a man, right? Like don't be that negative guy. Don't be that person that controls people, right? But then who do I be? Right? Like I am a man. Then do I need to feel bad about being a masculine man? Right? And so then what do? We tear off our uniforms, we throw it away, and we try to be something else. We, as in Shogun Trungpa says, you put on bell bottoms and a shirt, and you go and you do that, but you're really just changing your uniform. You're not actually working with being able to expand and to hold space for to learn how to learn, right? To learn how to fit it all in, right? And when I say that, I see like just I mean, you just go on Instagram and you see like stoicism, right? Like stoicism, they've taken this entire philosophy of what of this deep philosophical teachings on how to connect with our environment and with the world, and we make it into this facade of don't feel, right? Like I need to cut off from feeling emotions, and I don't go down too much of a tangent, but to me it's like you being in this space and hearing how you relate to witnessing the other men all bring it in. It's like that's why we do this. like to bring 10 men, and we're only doing this with 10 men. Like this is what the world needs, right? Like we need 10 men times 1 million to get together and just be like, oh wow, this is what we're all dealing with. We're all feeling this. And when the Me Too movement happened and said all of these men are being this way, it doesn't mean I need to throw out what it means like being a man. I actually just need to learn how to expand and how to be able to be with all of this. John, I'm sure you have something to say. I hope you do.
I do. Okay, the man box. All right. I was raised in a very rigid masculine environment.
Yep.
So what that translated to for me was an internalization of feeling that something was always wrong with me. Right. It could be identified as shame, but that's been a huge part of my work throughout my life. You know, from being like a young man, even as a teenager, is looking at that and exploring that and countering it. Those messages that I had accepted as true, but the vast majority of that time was accepting it on an intellectual level versus a feeling level. And so I'm finally at 57 years old, you know, at the place, and I'm sure the Unshakable Man and my involvement in this program for the last 2 years has been a huge part of that. But like, I know that to be true now. I know there's nothing wrong with me. I know that, like, you know what I mean? Like, all of those messages that I had internalized as sort of a second skin, it's such a relief because all along, no matter who said, no matter what therapist is like, no, that's true. You know, you're fine just as you are. It's like, yes, but. Inside, I still felt that wasn't true. And now for the first time, I know it's true. You know, I know that I'm just as much a man as any of the other versions of masculinity out there.
Yeah.
You know, and there's so many. And so I think men that are rigidly masculine don't recognize the other versions or any deviation from the thin slice of or the tiny little box that they put themselves into, right?
Right. And when you say that, I notice a story in my head, and I notice the tension in my body. And then it's, for me, about caring for that while being fierce. Like this, I'm not backing down from this. I'm not saying that this is acceptable, but I'm also not moving into it and saying that these guys, right? Like, and there is a part of me that wants to get up on stage and say, use this as a platform to attack, right? Men who are saying things and doing things. But my deeper knowing knows that this is how we actually change ourselves and change the world, as we invite men in to have these experiences, right? And when you said in your head, like you knew there was intellectually, but then there was always these parts that were like fighting for it, but now you know it in your body. This, to me, that's a man speaking from a place of doing this somatic work, right? Like slowing down in relationship, right? And it's always this like effervescent, high tide, low tide, right? Like we can't do it all in a weekend. We have to have a culture of showing up and then going back into the default experience of our life and seeing how we show up in a different way. Right?
Yeah. And I think one of the most valuable components of helping me get to where I am, at least in this program, has been the other men, the brothers, so to speak, that act as mirrors back to me. I frequently, as a steward, talk to the younger men about this. It comes up a lot, around their own feelings of incompetency or less than, all of that. It's like, okay, let's look at this. Like, you came in as you 100% unmasked into the Unshakable Man, and now you're a facilitator. It's
Yeah.
like, how did that happen? It's
Yeah.
like, you must be competent, you must be gifted, there must be some really good things going on there, or that wouldn't have happened, right? Same with me. It's like, you invited me to be a steward, a year in, and it's like, wow, I have something to offer. Like, Chris thinks that, I mean, there was a part of me that was like, that's so validating. That's just so validating to come from a group of men, and not from a book or from my own, self-thoughts, affirmations, or from a therapist even.
Yeah. It's a way to make the point on belonging, right? Like to me, what I see and what you're sharing is it's my appreciation for the emptiness of what the tools that we teach, right? Like, we're teaching men how to create these spaces, right? How to move through. I mean, really, we're teaching meditation in a group, but like we're teaching men how to move through these stages, right? These 7 stages of running a group and being with each other. And those teachings, the structure itself is empty. And we're creating this empty space, and then we're learning to be in it, and to be aware of how we respond to what's in there. And then as we move through these subjects, we cultivate a sense of belonging through the experience of doing that. And then men like you and me who have been through it get to help other men through it. And when we talk about this, I just can't help but project it out onto the world of, this is what, when I hear or I read like a men talking about like how to get women to sleep with them, or like how to just, it's even hard for me to find what it is because I'm just not in there anymore, right? But or working out in order to harden our bodies in order to feel more safe, which is totally different than connecting with our environment, connecting with our bodies, feeling more tender and sensual, right? And being able to actually feel more, right? And I also want to say, from the outside, I can't see it, right? Like, that can only be discerned by another man, right? Like, I can look at another men's work organization and think, oh, that looks like they're being militaristic, or they're being, but I really have to ask a man, like, what is this for you? How has being in this group actually connected you with the world, right? Or is this fear-based? Is it about disconnecting and pushing people away? Yeah.
Are we still in Man Box?
Yeah. Man box or belonging. Yeah, wherever.
Yeah, I was just reflecting as you were talking, and I think that in education measurement terms, the population that comes to TUM are self-selected, and I think the combination of self-selected, and I mean that in a good way, like, I think high quality men who have a lot going for them, who want to get better at what they do, right, and who they are. Combine that with the structure of TOM, with the checking in and the being present and the soft rules that apply. I think the combination of the two creates an environment in which it really is, for me, a very comfortable space to shake off some of the nonsense that other parts of our society and my growing up laid on me. It's just easier. It's easier, more comfortable to put some of the nonsense aside. For what it's worth, I have antenna. I've been around a while, and because of my upbringing, I have antenna of men who have always called the extra Y chromosome men. You know, that they just need to maintain that extra Y and the XY chromosome thing because that's what they're supposed to do. And so they spend a lot of time and energy, not just being men, but it needed to be like supermen, to live up to all the standards and all. And I have learned to successfully, it took a while, to avoid men like that. And like TOM is like the opposite of that. It's like, people have a better balance to themselves. They're different, we have our issues. I have my issues and stuff, but not that extreme that does exist out there. And I've gotten good at it, thank God. I think I'm doing as well as I am. Because one of the reasons with my male relationships, because I've gotten better at avoiding that type of man.
Yeah. Yeah. When you say avoid, I say like shrink or feel like that there's like a feeling, you can feel it in our bodies, right? But I can't help but just want to remind myself that we're recording this for our fundamentals, right? But I want to notice that like the fundamentals there's men in our community that we've been here for 2 years. And what I keep hearing from guys is that really from 7 men individually, just in the past 2 weeks, that like going through the fundamentals there's just so much to learn. There's so much seeing in our experience. And when I hear that like our community is self-selecting, I feel like when I see something in lots of different places in a different way, but it's all saying the same thing, it's like truth, right? You can really feel it and see it in the world. And I think what I see in our community and in the men that are here is that that it is very special when we talk about like surviving versus connection, or that autonomic process, that it really is a courageous act to choose to be vulnerable, right? Like many men, very few men. When you say that, I appreciate how big a deal it is for a man to show up in this space, right? It's almost hard to comprehend how insane it is to come here, right? Like we can record things like this, and that's what we're doing. I mean, literally 3 men, the 3 of us are sitting here and we're recording this video, this session, this talk, and we're putting it in a learning center for a man who maybe joined the community, but hasn't been to a group, to watch this and to feel seen in it somehow, right? It's all words and images pointing in a direction saying, hey guys, like it can be a different way. Like, come try this out for yourself. Feel this for yourself. See if it feels good to you or not. And that is literally what the world needs. We're in this community, we're inside, and we're not living in this community. We have lives. And that is what it means to me to be an open-hearted leader, an open-hearted warrior, like a peaceful warrior, right? An awakened man, an unshakable man. I don't really care what you call it, right? It's to realize like, wow, I can actually feel this way. I can be this way. And then in the structure of a group, we drop out of our head and egoic patterns, which is a reactive state, and we get into our body. And then when we feel we feel calm and creative when we get into our bodies. We get ideas of how we can actually make a shift or change in our life. And that's what the inspired integration is. That's what it is when we come out of group and we go back into our life. And when our partner yells at us or screams at us, instead of attacking back with our protective parts, maybe we have the awareness to go and to care for our own parts, right? And to show her that I can actually be with you here, right? Or maybe like John, like we have the opportunity to see a young man who's having a challenging time and actually see into him and to be like, I don't need to tell you to be tough, to toughen this out. Or maybe you can actually discern it, right? And be like, actually, you got to go into that, man. Like go out there, like push, like open to that fear and take action anyways, right? Which is such
Mhm.
a wild, right? Like it's just
Mhm.
not that easy to just say like, right? Because if I take that one statement right there, that's the archetype of being this go-getter guy. It's like, no, I'm whole, I'm sensual, I got to have it all, I'm trying to be all these things, right? And so I just go on that long diatribe to just be like, that's what we're doing here, right? Like
Mhm.
teaching, training men to have these skills, and that's what the community is for. And this second week is literally to engage on this subject just over and over and over again, right? And then
If I could, Chris, you've covered a couple topics here, and I want to, if I could, comment from my perspective. One is you talked about courage, and I clearly was not courageous in my life 2 years ago, and substantially through participating so actively in TUM, the courage of the men has rubbed off on me, and I'm making, and John was there when I made some decisions 6 months ago when he visited with me and others men in Florida. I made a decision poolside that day, talking to you and Stephen. I made a decision on the spot that I was going to make some big changes. And it's taken me like 6 months to do it. But and I've had to make a lot of decisions along the way. But I know that I just have this feeling when I make these hard decisions that there are these like really high quality, good men around me, behind me, to the side of me, supporting me to go forward. So even when I'm not in group in TUM, I feel their presence. I feel your presence. So I feel more courageous. Then another topic you covered was this idea of learning and relearning. And everyone has something to learn. I've been around a while, and there are moments where I think I've learned a lot or enough, or a particular subject enough and all. But one of the things I've learned is that I always have more things to learn. That's why this basics course, the fundamentals of TUM, is working for me, because I've changed my philosophy about learning. Is that I don't think I was arrogant in terms of knowing it all, but I thought I knew enough.
yeah,
And I just love intersecting with the new men who come into the groups, the young men who come in, because I learn so much from them, and
yeah.
I'm challenged to keep learning.
Yeah, it's
So,
awesome. It's
I
me
mean,
too. Me too.
yeah. So it's and in fact, I have a lot of respect for the younger generations. The 20 somethings, the early 30 somethings, and all the struggles they go through, all the challenges they have, and also the fresh energy, the fresh perspectives, the more global perspective on things than my generation had. And so I really love getting to know the new guys and hearing their story, even though they get wrapped up in their struggles and their difficulties and their trouble with their partners and stuff like that. I see beyond that. I see the
Sure.
fact that there's like this new generation of young men who really, and I can just tell they're going to make it. They're going to do it. They just need to like sand off some of the rough edges, and feel supported.
Mhm.
I can't help but recognize that it's the two elders in the community here on a Thursday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Like
Mhm.
that is a I mean I'll be honest, it's a I feel like a constant fundamental paradox for this work, right? Of um, just that battle between like going, and I say battle, right? And is it a battle? But it's just that reality of survival of like, I need to go to work. I need to put food on the table. Like it costs money to be a member of Unshakable Man, right? And I feel have been so challenged by that of how do we bring this work to more young men, right? But it's I think just from getting to do the fundamentals just this one time, it's it for me, I think it's recognized that this is like a vehicle, right? Like a way to inspire guys to try it out for a month and see what it's like. And then at the end, our last week is commitment, celebration, appreciation, and commitment. Maybe you don't come back. Maybe you do. It doesn't work for your schedule, and you need to go back into the flow of your life. But that to me doesn't mean that it's over, right? It means that we've inspired one
Mm-hmm.
young man to bring this work into his life or into his community, and that to me is the deeper mission here, right? To train men to do this. So I feel like I'm talking in circles now.
Yeah, it's sometimes hard to fit self-improvement into one's budget, right? But somehow necessities like $6 cups of coffee and $3,000 mountain bikes and people, guys, whatever, very expensive roses to their girlfriend that they pissed off the night before. I mean, guys
Yeah.
find them,
Or their boyfriend. Gotta
you know what I mean? So it's and I've been around. I've tried, and I'm very grateful to the different therapists and other groups and coaches that have helped me along the way. And there's to me there, and I paid for those other things for the most part, not voluntary. And the cost of this enterprise is just not high. I mean, it just is not. It's low normal. I mean, it just, if you really take a look at it, but people are not used to paying for self-improvement. They for some reason, it's not on their budget,
It's working. It's working.
Yeah.
So guys, where have we arrived in this, right? Like I just want to take the last 5 minutes to appreciate the 4 themes, right? Survival, shame, the man box, and belonging. Where have we arrived? What is your takeaway?
Well, Chris, my takeaway, and it's always been my takeaway, the most valuable thing of this program, part of this program, is the belonging. I think Brian spoke very eloquently to it, and the first point he made a few minutes ago, which was, no matter what he's going through, like he has the power of the group, this group of men, these stellar men behind him, and I felt that since day one. And that's what brought me to this program, was going through the dark night of the soul. I mean,
Right.
We've talked about that, and I did not feel that outside of my, my family and my day-to-day friends. I really needed a space like this to validate me and to support me. And at first it was funny because you were always like, oh my gosh, this is so great, like in every group, and this is the medicine. And I sort of was just like, okay. But like, once I formed the connections with the guys in the group, it's absolutely the medicine. It's like, you don't need to show up and say a word. Like you're going to be like 1,000 times better within the first 5 minutes, because the group makes you present, the group centers you, you co-regulate with other men in the group.
There you go.
All of those magical things happen with no effort at all other than showing up. So yeah, that's where it's brought me to.
that right there, John, is the like discovering that, right? That hard way versus the open way, right? That allowing versus trying, and that co-regulation of I can be here, right? To me, that is when it's just so special for you to share that. I just imagine a man joining this community and hearing that, being like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, I'll give this 6 months, like I'll show up, right?
Mhm.
Because that is when you discover that without doing anything except for allowing, I'm actually being more energized, right? I can allow this
Mhm.
stuff to come up on and in my body, and I can learn to connect with my life. And actually what I've been doing is disconnecting, right? Trying to
Mhm.
interpret or lots of rumination or automatic negative thinking, which is all stress in the body, right? And it's just this unraveling, this blossoming process. So thank you for
Mhm.
sharing, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Yeah. Brian, what about you?
Well, I'll take just one angle on this, and that is back to the idea of learning and focusing on these concepts or words. It is very helpful. An example for me is the word shame. I've known that word; it's been around my whole life, right? I never thought about it. 6 months ago, one of the TUM men who did one-on-one training with Chris, he brought shame into our side conversation, and I realized I'm just starting to explore that power of that role in my own life and how it might be an obstacle for me moving it forward. So some of it's almost like it's okay. Yes, I'm learning somatic response for the first time. I'm learning a lot of other things, but part of it's almost like an academic thing. Is what is shame? So it's like being at a graduate seminar or whatever. It's like, what is shame? How does it impact you? What do you remember about this? I never went through that in my whole life until 6 months ago with a TUM guy, and now
Wild.
this course.
Yeah. Yeah. Education. It's amazing, right? Yeah. My takeaway is this process of getting to just re-engage on these subjects over and over again. How much just getting to hear how nourishing it is, and knowing that the two of you have been here, right? And that a man who might be new in the future might be watching this, that like it we're just refining, right? Like refining these basic concepts, but basic isn't simple. Right? They're more powerful. And then it's very cool to be here right now in our second conversation about survival shame, the man box belonging. Last week we had the connection, the power of presence, being present, and how to check in, and knowing that there's this natural, almost supernatural, so natural, supernatural change next week when we come in for our third group, which is assertive vulnerability, going deep and using the space, where now that we've been here 2 times, we've experienced the structure being in a group. Now we've engaged on these incredible subjects, right, that connect us all. Now, for the first time, we actually have some sense of belonging. And when we come into the space, we can, for the very first time, we can actually remove any outside subject and just bring something into the space, right? And that to me is a turning point, right? That to me is we've gone over the top of the hill and now we can start going deep, where we've learned something, or we're beginning to be aware of that we've learned something, and we can actually use the space, right? And that's what we mean by use of space, is come in and be vulnerable, right? In an assertive way, right? Like choose to be vulnerable, not a vulnerability from the place of I'm never going to see these guys again, but actually bring something that's meaningful and important and resonant and sensational, meaning I felt something. It could be positive or it could be negative, but I like to put, there's no bad or good emotions, but my relationship with it could be, I want to attach to it. I like it. like joy, celebration, or it could be something like the dark night of the soul, right? But you bring it in and we get to, for the first time, learn how to work with it in the space. And that,
Mhm. I just wanted to add something tangential for the a message for the new men. We're giving out a lot of information, and you don't have to get it at once. You don't have to get it today. You don't have to get it tomorrow. You could do like what John said. Sometimes you just show up and just listen. I mean, it just be patient with yourself. Go easy on yourself. Learning all this, but it's worth it.
yeah. I agree. I wonder as we create the fundamentals trade if we even need the like it takes you out of it. We're planting seeds and pointing in a direction, but you guys didn't need this, right? You guys came. I didn't have this. We just showed up in the group. But thank you for sharing that, Brian. Thank you for saying that, because that is the constant thing of like, just show up, just come to group, just practice. Awesome. Well, right on time, gentlemen. It is a joy getting to riff on these subjects with the three of you, two of you. I'll see you
Same,
guys
brother.
in group.
Thanks, Chris.
You're around.
Take care, Brian. Bye, guys.
Bye, John. Bye, Chris.